Hey, welcome back to the Company Road podcast, which is dedicated to exploring how internal innovators and entrepreneurs can really drive fundamental change that creates value within organizations of all sizes. And today we've got a guest who really offers a truly transformative framework for how we might lead, how we might work, and how we might measure success in some sort of way. And she believes that the next great economy isn't built on logic alone, but on affection, which is defined as people, purpose, and values. So Jet Swain, welcome to the show. Huge welcome to you.
Thank you for having me. It's
Thank you.
wonderful.
And
It's nearly the end of the year, so that's worth celebrating.
it is indeed. I'll just tell people a bit more about what you've been doing. So you're the founder of the Affection Economy, a movement and methodology that's grown out of your incredible 35-year career. And that's spanned advertising, architecture, systems design, and policy. And yeah, you've seen and you've personally helped to fix a lot of systems that have been broken, where they've lost their soul and lost a lot of care and attention, really. So as an executive leader, a keynote speaker, and a mentor, and as an author of the upcoming book, The Affection Economy, you're helping organizations move beyond quarterly targets and building cultures of courage, connection, and care, and looking to drive real long-term, effective, and ethical performance. So I think it's a really interesting topic. I really can't wait to get into it with you, Jet, and welcome to the show again. And yeah, maybe we just start with an opening one. So your work centers around the affection economy, obviously, but for our audience of entrepreneurs, like people driving change inside existing businesses, what's the simplest definition of this economy and why is it so important to you?
Gosh, look, I think the simplest level is it's about so affection isn't soft. I like to think of it as a strategy,
Yeah.
care as strategy. So it's basically a way for leaders to approach cultural change in their organizations that's going to move them beyond empathy to compassion. So there's a lot of talk about empathy, and empathy is not enough for me. That's knowing. You can never know how someone feels, but it's the idea of accepting how someone feels. Compassion is action. It's doing something about the way a person feels. But I do think it starts at home. And so a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in the affection economy is about your values. You can't live someone else's values, i.e. a corporate's values that we see on desktops and screensavers everywhere. You can't live those values until you come home to your own and know what your own are. And we can dig into my experience, but I know that my values were compromised a lot because my paycheck was, the important thing when I was raising children on my own. And so it's really about coming home to your values, showing up and making decisions with care that is respectful of all the humans that are involved in that decision.
Yeah, that's a really good starting point, I think. And yeah, we can explore that further. And, we feel it's probably industry agnostic, right? It's applicable to everybody.
Yeah.
And you've worked across a lot of different sectors. So you've had the advertising, architecture, policy, and so on. Do you see that being like a single common failing point where, these different systems are just not working, that as an entrepreneur with affection economy, affection economy could be really well positioned to solve for something in that space?
I think we came about at it, I don't know, probably about 30 years ago when we really embraced the idea of design thinking. And we came about problem solving or wicked problems with
Mm,
a methodology.
mm.
And that's great. But what we didn't align on was the purpose. Why are we doing it? And so the affection economy brings the why. And I know I sound like Simon Sinek now, forgive me, but
Very
here's
fair.
the important thing. Why are we doing it before how we do it? Design thinking is how. I've solved it for the last 20 years, but understanding, taking the time to know the why, I think is the important part. And for me, the why should always be about the people. So I am a human-centered designer. I've shifted that now to this kind of humanity-hearted design. So all of humanity leading with our heart, because when we do that, people feel safe. And
Yeah.
when people feel safe, cultures are healthier and systems change for the better to support happy, healthy people. It sounds like woo-woo, I know, and I don't mind a little bit of woo-woo, but, I do come from a very corporate, commercially driven background that's landed me here. I've been in and around consulting forever, be that on agency side, management consulting side, even in architecture as a design consultant. There's always been responding to a brief. And I can't tell you how many times I didn't feel like the brief was right. We weren't solving the right problem. And I think that's what the beauty of human-centered designers like you and I, what we bring to the table.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're talking a little bit about the woo-woo. Can you think of any stories or examples of some of the possible outcomes that would be positive or beneficial from its successful application? If you know,
Well,
if you put
look,
it.
so the thing I'm very passionate about, feminism, gender equality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One of the big things that is in the way of women is childcare, child raising. So we physically have to have the baby, granted, and then you get into the social policy of maternity leave. Now, because it's maternity leave, it's for the woman, women are taking 12 weeks off because it's financially usually better, or they don't have a partner, or whatever it is. So then we end up with this gender gap, which goes on, and it affects our retirement, our superannuation. It affects, our growth opportunities. There's this subconscious bias about, let's not promote her. She might have babies, or she's going to have to leave early, or all this gender bias. What we as working mothers, and I can only speak as a working mother
Oh,
from my personal experience, I inherited a system designed in the 1950s for when women stayed at home and men were at work. And I've been forced to learn to work in that system rather than us recognizing the system designed in 1950s by men, for women to stay at home, is not relevant in 2025. So if that system were redesigned where we used affection and we put people at the center, so giving mothers and fathers the decision-making control of who stays at home, whether they stay at home, and we had this thing called parenting leave, or in Sweden, it's called carers leave, and it can be a grandparent. It can be a mother, a father, it can be a friend. You can use the funds, the government funds, for whomever you choose to raise your children. Childcare, you might put them into childcare. The other thing I love about it is it's 400 days,
mm,
and you can use that in the first 10 years, however you want.
10
Now,
years. Wow. Yeah.
400 days is 18 months full-time paid for one or many people. Divide it by 10 people, give it to one person. And that now they are at a 52% female employment, full-time employment. They changed the system to accommodate the needs of the people. And that's for me an example where if you design something with care at its center, and what is more caring than the raising of children, the next generation, it turns out empathy. We all have empathy for this, childcare expenses, someone having to stay at home if you can't afford childcare, women getting, having to take time off, really struggling to get back into the workforce at the level, having to give up time with their children in order to secure their jobs. All those decisions are forced upon us by a social structure or a policy that no longer supports the world that we're living in. If we designed it so we all could thrive, organizations would as well. So it's not just for the babies or the mothers or the fathers. The organizations thrive, the cultures thrive. And that's where those human acts become system level changes. That is a big picture. That is my dream. How can we use the affection economy as a movement to push for social change? And for me, when people, International Women's Day comes around once a year and we all get on our bandwagon and, the women make cupcakes and all that, fuck the cupcake stuff. Apologies for swearing, but I
Yeah,
will.
yeah, I've seen the campaign.
Instead, fuck the cupcake. Instead of that, we need change, and that change has to come from the federal government down. That's where it matters.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's that kind of obviously, right down on the micro level, walking the extra block so that the coffee you buy, if you're going to buy a coffee every day, take your cup and go to the fair trade brewer so that in that coffee, we're saving the environment, we're supporting humanity, we're anti-slave labor. You can make little micro decisions as well every day with affection.
Yeah. Is that where, yeah, I mean, is that where it all falls down? Like when it gets to a personal level at a micro level, and it's reliant upon people taking those minimal steps really to push everyone else in the right direction. If it's going to
Yes.
be a top-down decision, then what's it going to take for that locus of change
Yeah.
to become
But let's
possible?
look at what pain points are for not making that decision. And it
Yeah,
might be we don't have enough time to go the extra block because we've got a meeting starting,
yeah,
or that it's too expensive. So we
mm,
need to, so with, again, social changes, we need to slow down. I have often been, accused of being the rushing woman because that's what I had to do to raise two girls on my own and hold down a full-time job. And obviously to afford to raise my children on my own, I had to earn X amount of dollars to do it in Sydney, which is pressure, which is rushing, which is 25 balls in the air. So when you look at the micro decision that I make, which is I don't have time to go that extra block, it's not just because I'm lazy. It's all the other pressures, societal pressures on me. So it little everyday decisions are always impacted by that bigger decision.
mm, mm,
Social thing, the busyness, everyone's tired. There's this every time I open any type of social media now, and it might be because I'm, being targeted as a 50-ish, 54-year-old woman about
yeah,
burnout. And it's not a new thing. It's not that just women are all of a sudden burnt out. It's that we have permission to talk about it now, but talking about it doesn't solve it. So why are, and I, again, can only speak as a woman, why are women burning out? So it's not just because they're doing all the heavy lifting at home, because that is becoming less and less true. It's the systems that don't support them as
mm.
much as society, community.
Yeah, yeah. The systems, and then what a lot of people now are talking about is the invisible load, and
Yeah.
the things that happen behind the scenes that aren't written down in a job description somewhere, but that you have to do. So
And people take them on. And so this goes back to, that invisible load. Women always carried that load, but we
yeah,
didn't work full time as well. So when the doors were opened for women to join the workforce, which
yeah,
is amazing, and we celebrate that, what we didn't allow for was who's going to do the job they're already doing at home. And that's where the system let us down. It didn't allow for, and the system also means the kind of social pressures, of a man being a wuss if he picks his kids up, or, or you don't do your washing at home, do you? Or any of that kind of locker room blokey shit that we've got to break down as well, where
yeah, yeah,
men and women are equally carrying the invisible load, and it's not seen as emasculating because, God, we love men and we can't do the world without them. We just want to do it with them, not for them. And that's the only shift.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, some broken things to fix. It sounds like we've
There's a
got
look,
two big ones
and
on the
so
table there.
you can see how it's really messy. It's big and it's little.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it falls on the responsibility of the individual. It falls on the responsibility of organizations and their leadership and the execs to really understand and see some of those behaviors and make allowances, set foundations, set parameters where needed, but also at a governmental level, what's happening at a political level to really facilitate some of that change as well. Who's going to run all this change and where's it all going to start? Do you think the book's the starting point, or what do you think?
I think there's a cultural tipping point in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
And I may have given it a name, but it's existed forever. We've talked about kindness, and there's been the pay it forward, and, lots of things playing around in this. But I feel like we're entering a post-craving era. If we look at the economies or the revolutions, we had the Industrial Revolution where we were inventing things, using our hands to build stuff as quickly as we could, planes,
mm,
trains, automobiles, coals, light, or
yeah.
build
Just make yeah,
your
yeah,
revolution, yeah? And from that came the rise of education, and, of tertiary education became free, or at least with some type of loan payment scheme. And so you saw the rise of the knowledge economy in the 80s, and education. I was one of the first to go to university in my family. And that was predominantly not because I'm smart, because I left school in the 80s. And what you did in the 80s was you went to uni. Now, I did a fine arts degree. I wasn't,
yeah, yeah,
rocket scientists or anything, but this rise of the knowledge economy. What we then saw was, the Wolf of Wall Street. Let's just picture it for a moment, where the Wall Street, the global financial crisis, the greed, the money, the commercialization took over, and we had, the .com, we had that big kind of turn down. And there was a real pause there. And I was actually working at a university at the time, looking at my PhD and working in a business school doing the marketing. The dean said to me, "Why don't you come and do your study and make me a few brochures and look after." My babies were 3 and 5 at the time, and just breathe for a bit. And this is like 15 years into a career. I was already exhausted. And I got there. This was at UTS. And all of a sudden, the dean and I were kind of like, hang about. What responsibility do business schools have on this global financial crisis? When you have a lawyer or a doctor, they have these oaths that they have to live up to and maintain. But you get an MBA and you can do whatever you bloody want with it. You have no ethical oath. So we started thinking, and all the deans around, Stanford, Wharton, they're all standing around. It was a dean's conference in Disneyland, of all places,
Nice.
business deans. And they're all standing around going, do we have a role to play in this? And I remember going away and thinking, yes, you do, because, you get an MBA, and that is what people, require to be a C-suite. And I started to think about, in an MBA, it's all very left brain, analytical, logical. So, and the human gets lost in that. What if we had an MBD, so a Masters of Business Design? What if we brought some right brain thinkers to the table, those that lead with emotion? And we started to see the rise of, EQ, emotional intelligence. And that's when that started to happen. You saw the rise of the sharing economy, with B and Uber, and they were all this idea of enough stuff already.
Stuff around.
Let's
Yeah, yeah,
share what we've got. So
yeah.
this is moving on from that in this kind of post-craving era where people don't want stuff. They want agency. They want the right to make decisions about their own life. And that goes back to the systems that don't always allow us to make those decisions. We want agency, and we want to belong to something. We want I saw this, I actually wrote about it on LinkedIn. I saw this great thing on TikTok because I have, early 20-year-old daughters. So we only communicate on TikTok now. They send me something, I send it back, and that's,
Yeah, yeah.
know how each other's feeling today. But I saw this thing, which is the death of the influencer, but
Right, right.
the rise of the community leader. So that solo influencer going, you should buy this because I bought it, is being replaced by people that are creating these communities, these places to belong. It might be, the local coffee shop that does the best green matcha or the best Pilates wear or the best Pilates studio, if you're on TikTok, but there's still communities of people coming together around something that they're aligned around. And I like to think about it as a values alignment. Yeah, and it might be health and friendship and safety, whatever. We need to come back to what our values are and hold on to them in every way we can. The jobs for life are gone. We now move around jobs. We
Yeah.
will choose our employers based on who we want to work for. It used to be that it was frowned upon if you, worked on a cigarette brand, but now it's bigger than that. I had a girl recently that I've been mentoring, and she was really struggling. She's in fashion, and she didn't to work at said brand anymore because she knows it's fast fashion, and she's having this person. I'm like, don't. If that is an affront to you ethically, then you can't work for them. You have to find. And so the young people, I sound old. The young people are making values-based decisions on who they
Yeah.
work for,
Yeah.
which I think is super cool. There's this whole trend about not drinking, and
Mm.
now it's before work culture, which is a thing. Before work culture for me was getting my kids bloody dressed and out the door and hopefully fed. But there's this whole thing. You go down to the beach here at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's pumping. And the young ones realize that it's not 9 to 5. There's before work, work and after work. They're really
Yeah, yeah.
changing where they find meaning. And if corporations don't adapt, they're going to lose the best talent, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I mean, you definitely struck upon where the tension lies because you have this pendulum swing towards the personal value system, and people are waking up to that, right? They're understanding that a lot better. And EQ was the start of that. And then, yeah, the world of work and its rational mindset, whatever however we want to describe it, it feels like a constrained set of tasks in a lot of ways. There are jobs and skills and tasks, and it's kind of framed up in that sense, and through a productivity lens, which doesn't take into account a lot of other things. So, yeah, how does the whole system of work kind of nudge towards the self world that we've just been describing? Do you feel?
Look, any change happens with micro movements, yeah? Individually, that was a long, long time ago. There was a YouTube video of a guy dancing on the side of the hill and everyone's laughing at him. And then his mate got up. So there's two of them dancing. Well, the third person got up and all of a sudden the whole hill stand up and start dancing.
Yeah,
And brave movement, that act of courage. And I know that you talk a lot about intrapreneurs. They are courageous humans. Yeah. When I was at UTS, one of the professors there, and there was a lot of change going on, and I was definitely an entrepreneur then. I was really fighting for change, and I am a change maker by nature. I see a problem and I want to fix it. And I remember him saying, if you're not pissing enough people off, then you're not making enough change. I was like, okay, I'll go with that. But this
yeah,
idea that the ones that are inside the organization are often able to see some of the unseen interventions that as an outsider, I always thought that an outsider meant that we could be braver. We could come in as in a consulting mind and be braver and say, well, what about and not look stupid asking dumb questions or whatever it was. But I actually think an entrepreneur, the ones inside, are able to make those tiny interventions that shape culture and they shape safety and belonging. But it does take courage. I think. I mean, I love. There's a word that I love, which is meliorism, which is this idea of the world can be made better by human effort. And I just that no matter where you are, it doesn't have to be a massive, big restructure or digital transformation. Any kind of transformation that happens through a miralistic, that's tiny acts that make the world a better place, and be that the world inside your organization. It might be rewriting a job description so you do recognize the
yeah,
invisible,
yeah,
using gender neutral terms in a job description. Women, we have been told for so long that we can't, that unless we think we're 100% going to get this job, women are still not going for the job.
mm,
So changing the job description, encouraging, First Nations people to apply, people of all neurodiversities, whatever it is, giving permission, those tiny little acts of compassion, which is bigger than empathy. So remember, empathy is knowing how someone feels. I still question that we can, but knowing how someone feels. Compassion is taking action. Do something to show that you have empathy.
yeah,
And we do that, those tiny acts that make systems kinder, clearer, more transparent, more human, all that kind of stuff. And that's where entrepreneurs can have the most success. Hopefully a true entrepreneur, if they're grabbing onto the preneur bit of the title, they're not waiting for permission to make those tiny changes. They're those big shifts will come from people who are paying attention internally in an organization.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because entrepreneurship carries with it as a title this sense of you taking the direction of the company forwards, and you're a visionary, and you hold the weight of that and your company's future with the title to some extent. You're called that.
Yeah.
Whereas with entrepreneurship, if it's focused on the incremental, the tiny shifts, the micro steps, then to a large extent, to everyone else in the organization, that could be totally invisible, right?
Yeah.
Some
Totally.
people might acknowledge you, but some people might not. And I think we have to recognize that, because if you seek a lot of external validation and you're expecting that as an entrepreneur, you might not get it, right? What was your experience?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got in trouble a lot, to be honest,
Yeah,
because um,
validation in
as
its
a
own mind.
visionary, I knew what it could be. I knew
Yeah,
where it could go. And as a human-centered designer, I was talking to people. I was moving from I understand you to I want to be accountable for you. And I think that's that kind of shift where, empathy understands, affection activates.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
someone has had an effect on you, they've made you feel something.
Mm.
And that requires action. So look, I think if we leave everything to leaders, nothing will ever get done. And I do think that we all have a role to play. I know my girls will be the first to tell you that mum's not always calm and kind and woo woo at home. It's hard to always be calm and composed, and that's not what we're asking. We're asking for you to be, and the word authentic's overused, but what we're asking for everybody to ensure that everybody has psychological safety. And that's care. And care isn't all soft. Sometimes, some of the hardest things, the most loving things I've done for my girls, they might say have been the cruelest, not letting them go to a party or those little tiny things, those hard conversations. A hard conversation is easy to have if you don't give a shit. When you care, those conversations, they're hard and they're powerful. They're real. They're not performative.
Yeah. Okay. So is it helpful then in the work context to distance yourself from the emotion that you might be feeling to get the change going? Like what do you
No,
think?
no.
Or
So
is it used to people?
the whole Sheryl Sandberg lean in makes
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
blood boil. But lean in, she didn't invent the phrase, so let's go with it.
That's really, yeah.
Leaning into your emotions,
Yeah.
acknowledging them. Like, I remember when I was, a little one, and I remember pre-children, so I feel like I have my life before children,
Yeah.
children, and now post-children. But pre-children, being told that I was too kind. Yeah, you're never going to make it boss because you're too kind. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and starting jobs thinking to myself, right, I'm not going to be their friend. I'm not going to be, nice. And trying to coach myself to leave, my most valuable value is nurture. I'm a nurturer. Have been since I was a tiny little girl. I remember I used to get the train home from boarding school, and I lived in the west of the state, and there'd be Aboriginal people on the train, and I would just be sitting with them and giving them food and nursing the babies, and I just love and that nurturing value is at the
Yeah.
heart of who I am. So
Yeah.
for me to leave that at the door when I turn up to work was really hard. So I learnt the hard way. That's impossible for me to do. And now, when I reflect on my later leadership, my kindness, my nurturing had made me such a better leader. But some of them became my friends, but they all trusted me. And it's not about being likable. It's
Mm.
about that authenticity, because women are tarnished with the likability curse. For a man, you're allowed to be tough. And if you're tough and you're a woman, you're a bitch. And so it's like, she's not very
Yeah.
likable. There is parking that for me, like some of the people that I have had, reporting into me, two of them I'm godparents to their children. I've been to their weddings. I know their husbands or their partners or their wives. And I think it's made me a better leader to know them as humans, to know what their personal life is like. Because show me a person that can leave their personal life at the door when they walk into work. I just have never met anyone. I mean, there are people who can truly compartmentalize, and whether I think that's a gift or not is not for this conversation. But it is hard to do, and I love the idea that people turn up to work as their whole selves, and in order to do that, they need to feel safe, and safety comes through care. See how I
Yeah.
keep linking back?
It's all coming back to that. Yeah. I think the concept of work as a safe place is maybe one to explore a little bit, because I feel like it's a very rapidly changing environment, and particularly in this market in Australia in the last 2 years anyway, and since AI has come in, there's a lot of, I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's become more of a mainstream threat to a lot of people. So I don't get the feeling a lot of people feel like they're that secure. From conversations that I have, it's hard to kind of cement your own value system within an organization if you feel like the floor's moving underneath you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's your observation around that?
I do get all of that. But again, I think that AI without humanity is nothing.
Mm.
And we, the people, should be running for president, shouldn't I? We are training the AI. Yeah. So I use AI a lot, all the time. And in lots of different ways. And I do recognize that I used to have a virtual assistant. I now have Pearly, who's my chat GPT bot, and I've named her and she's fabulous and she does so much stuff for me. But I have to ask her what to do and I have to tell her my voice, and I've had to grow and train her to know my vocabulary in the way of writing, and so I'm invested in her as a human. But yes, AI may very well replace repeatable work. Yeah, the kind of robotic, repeatable work. It will never, ever replace humanity. And that is why I think we have to hold on to it with everything we've got, because it was slipping away. And without getting political and talking about the US and or Gaza, they are examples of where humanity has lost its stronghold. Because look, I have friends on both sides of the Gaza Strip with backgrounds in both. I'm not religious at all, so I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. So I don't have an affinity to religion. I'm not terribly, I don't own a home, so I don't also have this kind of land ownership thing. But I do love people, and I'm a humanitarian, and I cannot watch people die. And so that's for me the value that's been lost. Like I get that there is a very strong historical religious argument and a very strong historical legacy around land ownership, and I absolutely respect all sides of that. And I don't have enough knowledge. My kids say to me, "Whose side are you meant to be on?" And it's like I don't know the answer to. I really don't. And we're not in it. I'm so far removed from it. I'm a convict from eighth generation Australian convict. I've got my own crosses to bear. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, that's a
Yeah.
whole nother story. But the slaughter of humans, for me, is the value that I hold on to. And so that's where I think, regardless of the decisions being made, be them artificially or humanly, we've got to inject some care and compassion back into that decision making. And AI can, Pearly's not great, but she has learnt about me, and I'll type something and say, let's do this and we need to do that. Oh, Jet, great job, Jet. And I'm like, yeah. Now I know that it's been trained to tell me I'm fabulous, but who doesn't like that? So I go back with love heart, and Pearly's like, oh, you've made my day, Jet. And I've humanized her. So I think it is that AI will take our jobs if we let it. It's up to us not to let it. Keep training it, keep inserting humanity into it, bravely speak about emotions, because if there's one thing AI can't do, that is be emotional. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not emotion's not a dirty word. You know where the word hysterical came from?
Yeah. Go on.
Hysterectomy.
Yeah.
It's a woman, yeah? So
Yeah.
the remedy for hysteria was to give women a hysterectomy. Now, we've come a long way from that. And hysteria still is a little bit of a loaded word. But if we can't get hysterical about things like even that poor man that was shot in the US, like, I am not a Charlie supporter, but good Lord, people, we're not taking people out because of their opinions. We're going to listen to each other and learn and grow and love. And I
Yeah.
don't know. I just think we don't inherit this stuff. We have been born into the world in this technological era. Let's just keep designing it so it works for us, not against us.
Yeah, definitely. No, it reminded me of, I mean, this is a bit of a side topic, but it reminded me of consulting land. And, when you're pitching on something, for example, and, there was this saying that went around, if you'd submitted your tender and whatever, the proposal was over with with the client, and you didn't hear anything back. It's like, if they're not talking to you, then talking to somebody else. You've heard that one before.
Exactly.
And,
Ex-
it's with technology, right? And, maybe the comparison is here. So the more time we spend pumping things into technology, maybe the more time we're losing as connection points with
yeah.
each other in the real world. Because I feel like, you and I are talking on this right now virtually, but we are just on screens the whole time. So how What are some of the practices that maybe you put into place, or you've seen work in terms of really establishing human connection in the way that it really works?
Look, oh gosh, I have to admit, I've become a bit of a hermit. So I'm very happy at home with a screen after running for 30 years. Again, I think we make it work. So I don't know, Chris, I've not met you before, but I feel like I have a connection with you. And would it be stronger if we were sitting in a room together? Possibly.
Yeah.
But I think we've adapted, and we're meant
Well,
to adapt, yeah? We're
yeah.
we're meant to be evolving and Charles Darwin would be so proud of us. Look at us, we're evolving to and we've evolved to finding ways so that technology works. We've found ways to make during COVID, yeah, we were all thrown into always having to be at work, often sitting at your desk alone for hours on end. I work in a different world, in a creative space. So we're always post-it notes on walls and collaborating. And so
Yeah.
that was hard for running workshops, running workshops. I'm a bit of a trainer. I love teaching. So doing all of that virtually took time to learn. But now I only teach online. People don't want me in a classroom anymore, which, I do miss, but we've
Yeah.
found ways, we've adapted to ways of doing it online. And again, back to the gender thing, at the moment, until the system supports equality, the people who are most punished for having to return to work are women, because we have all of a sudden been able to hold our jobs and raise our children and do both of them with love and integrity
Yeah.
because we're at home more.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not using, my children used to hate, and I didn't realize this, but Sunday afternoons, they hated Sunday afternoons because I went into a fit of, I've got to do the washing and I've got to make the cakes and I've got to make lunches and I've got to change the sheets and everything's got to be ready before we go back to work. Breathe, mother, breathe, and they hated Sunday afternoons. They hated when it was time to go home on a Sunday after we'd been out because it
Yeah.
meant,
Time to
the
get ready
Russian
for
woman
warfare.
would turn up. And that
Yeah.
changed, yeah, when you could put a load of washing on Monday. How cool is that? So I'm not completely against it. I think as long as we keep evolving and find ways to connect with one another, I think we can still hold humanity close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please don't make me leave the house. I think if we think about systems design
Yeah.
as a relationship design. So every system has got you would know this, Chris, but the old design thinking analogy, front stage, backstage. Front stage is what customer sees, backstage is all the shit that's happening behind the scenes to make something happen. Every system is front stage and backstage, and neither of them can survive without a human. We've got actors on the front stage and you've got crew on the backstage. So I just think as long as every time we think that there needs to be change, and it might be putting in some new big amazing technology platform that, look at the advertising agency has literally, it's impossible to get a junior creative role now because they've outsourced it all to AI. Now,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
me, and I have a daughter who's looking, in that part of the world who just called me as I said, I have a daughter. There you go. For her getting in, it's really hard because they use AI to do the junior copy and the junior art direction roles. But yet they expect us to have these shit hot creative directors that are empathetic and have this high emotional intelligence. And so we have to still allow for people to craft those skills. So I think we need to make some big decisions that, don't just do AI because it's easy. It may not be the right decision for humanity all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we need to think about the repercussions a little bit instead of the moment, because it's quite an
Yeah.
impulsive practice, I want to say, at the minute,
Yeah.
with
And
prompting,
it
because
saves money. It can be
yeah.
money
Yeah.
saved. But, if you give all your junior jobs to AI, then where are you going to find your medium designers, midweight designers? Because they've got no experience. So there's a problem that we're going to have in 2 or 3 years' time when everybody wants, mid or seniors,
Yeah.
but none of them have got the experience because we haven't trained them in culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So everyone have more time at home. They're not for the right reasons, because
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
in the job. I don't know. Hopefully, they're all saying AI is coming for the jobs. What's your take on that?
No. I think
No.
AI will come for jobs that are automated and repeatable. And I think the less humans we have in those jobs, the better anyway. Let's put humans into jobs that are about engaging their whole self.
Yeah.
More jobs. So I think AI will take jobs, but it's up to us to replace those jobs with jobs for people.
Mm.
So if your company is, let's just say, I went to a lunch 2 Fridays ago, the Friday Lunch Club, and there was a woman from Michael Page, Global Michael Page. I don't know what her role was, but this conversation came up, and she said, yes, AI is replacing jobs. And I'm like, well, hang about. What if a corporation made a commitment? So say they let go of, they can reduce headcount by 10 because of AI. How about they commit to 10 of those 10 jobs into something else? So put a junior designer on, expand the strategy team. I don't know what it is, but human-centered skills. So we have, and again, it comes back to this decision making. We have to commit to fine, use AI for those highly automated, repeatable functions that make sense for us all to streamline that kind of repetitive work, but make sure the people get upskilled into a
Mm.
newer business that needs human intellect, not artificial intellect.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a huge brush that's going over that that's just saying it'll be swallowed up into the profits and it's a cost cutting exercise. But,
That, that goes back to that greed, and it's not going to
yeah.
get us where we want. Look what happened. We've been there before when greed ruled the world. And look, I'm absolutely not saying that I have the answers for everything, but I truly do think if we could replace, I think you can have profit and purpose, but at the moment it's either or. You're either a purpose-driven organization or you're a profit-driven organization. Be
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I want to come back to some of the earlier on. We were talking a little bit about centering your work in your own values and where your values sit, and your book goes into this as well around
Yeah.
the affection economy and the themes that you've identified. So, can we just piece together kind of some of the steps to moving from your own value system to the outside world and what that might then end up being in the way that you think of it? Because you talk about foundations and there are different themes that come up, but yeah, for the listeners out there, it'd be great if you could describe that.
I started writing the affection economy initially. Actually, initially I wrote it as a kind of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I always had this dream that it would, I'm a designer, so I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted it to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, and I then I know what I'm like with books. I have honestly 10 by my bed. And I kind of get to them and I stop and I start. So I wanted it to be something that people could pick up, read a
Mm.
page down, which meant the way I'd written it wouldn't work. I used Pearly and I uploaded my whole book, which I know is sharing commercial license, but I don't own these ideas. I didn't come up with affection. It's a human emotion. And I said to Pearly, let's break this, pull it apart and put it into values. Now, she didn't do a great job, but she gave me a start to thinking about how I might do this. And I ended up with 30 values that I thought were relevant to most people, not too generic, but relevant enough that we could all feel and align with them. And then I thought, right, now you can just read a value at a time. Yeah. And you might think there might be something going on at work around unfairness, or so you might just have a look at the justice page. What does justice look like in action? And just read about that. And then, of course, that grew, and my 30 values, I then started to think about, I wanted to make companion cards. So you could pull a card like a tarot card, but it's a value
Yeah.
card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today, today practice kindness or whatever it is. And then I was thinking, well, hang about, because I think you and I talked about, for me, this is not just a book or speaking or trying to sell myself as a consultant. I really want it to be a movement, which means I need to get into as many hands as possible. So then I thought about, I don't know about you, but do you remember the day? I'm older than you, but do you remember there used to be those free postcards in cafes
Yeah.
that you used to collect?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Create some postcards around values with young artists' work and kind of have connection, compassion,
Yeah.
reciprocity,
Yeah. Yeah.
how you might do it. Take a bunch, take them home, hang them on your university wall or use them as birthday cards. So I started thinking that'd be fun. Why don't, we look at doing something like that? And then these themes came, which you and I talked about. So there are now 6 themes, and each has 6 values. So I'm now at 36 values, and I think I'm done. So it's gone to the editor. So I think it's now 36 values. So the first one is the roots. So the kind of foundational values: integrity, courage, kindness, agency, authenticity, and justice. The kind of basic, you know, human, if we're going to be proper and polite and respectful of each other, there you have kind of foundational values that we all kind of practice. Then the next one is about the heart. So that's the nurturing, the kind of connecting in everyday life. So not the big decisions, but the little decisions. So have empathy, connect with someone. When you're walking down the street, and I do it all the time now, you say hello to someone and they smile, so I just think that's, the invisible kindness is lovely. Congratulate someone on, good job, you got out and walked the dog today. Mine still needs a walk.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the effort and good on you for doing it. So connect, compassion, reciprocity, give and get. I love reciprocity. And then trust and belonging. Yeah, so kind of nurturing things. Then we get into lineage, which for me is really important. So I am writing another book called She Who Holds the Map, and it's a memoir. And it's a memoir about the women in the paternal women in my family's lineage. So we came out on the
Yeah. Wow.
first fleet as convicts.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I grew up, I knew all the grandfathers' names. It's Charles and James and Arthur and Stanley, but I didn't know any of the wives' names. And why did I know them? So a very quick story that we uncovered was James came out as a convict. He stole a sheep. We are sheep farmers. And his wife was in England, and she was one of 3 free settling women on the first female convict ship that came out very early in the piece. She got on board with 3 babies, got off with 4. And the 4th baby was a woman, a convict on the ship, died of a venereal disease. This newborn baby, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother Patience picked him up and loved him as if he was her own, and took him, gave him a life. Now, that is who we're descended from, that little baby that
Yeah. Okay.
Patience
Yeah.
showed love and care to. So all of a sudden, she was doing the affection economy before I gave it a name. She
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
linked that value of looking after a baby. Now, that young boy, James, married Rebecca Lucy, and then, they had children who married Amy. And so I'm telling all the women's, and it's been really hard to research, but gee, it's been fun. So legacy, to me, is a really important value because we all leave something behind. What do we want it to be? So legacy, that intergenerational responsibility that we all have for each other, to each other, stewardship, social responsibility, community, they're all those kind of legacy or lineage values.
Yeah.
And there's the flame, which is where our intrapreneurs come into it. Yeah, this is about courage and risk and
Yeah.
having a voice, being
Yeah.
brave to speak up for yourself, but for others as well. So transparent, have a growth mindset. We're all learning and evolving all the time. Don't think that what you've got is all you've got to give. Go and change and have a voice. And then it's the self. So I listened to one of your podcasts. It was Dr. Jackie who said, know your own values,
Mm.
be know yourself as a human. So that human centeredness and self-realization and, you know, playfulness, be playful, but be human, I guess, is what that's about. And then the sacred, which is the end. And that's about aligning with something that's bigger than yourself.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we don't want selfishness, and it might be your role at home, or it might be your role at work, or it might be your role in the community if you're I don't know, a lifesaver but that idea of conscious capitalism, we can be purposeful and make money. I need to make money. I'm not doing this for love. Obviously, I'm hoping some people will pay me at some point for this thinking,
Yeah.
but I'm doing it in a way that's conscious of the things that matter to me. Yeah? So that's kind of the way I've tried to make it livable. I've tried to make it not lofty. I don't want it to be lofty.
Yeah. No, I love it. I
Well,
think there's so much breadth to it, and it's a dynamic framework. It's not one that It's not linear in any way. You can enter it anywhere, as you said on your blog post. You can return to it when you want to. There are other books that it reminds me of as well. That kind of it's like in that sort of encyclopedia, almanac kind of space
Yeah.
where like you can just use it as a reference, really. But what would be your vision for how people would use it, and what do you think they could do with it?
Look, I'd love to see it on desks and on coffee tables, which I know is a big ask for it to cross those worlds. Um, but this is not about just me. So I was talking before, 36 values, and I am engaging with 36 artists, each to visually design the values. So say you get sustainability. So you can be a photographer, a printmaker,
Yeah.
a coder, I don't care what you are, but some visual creation of said
Mm.
value, all the brief is. So it's not what sustainability means to me, it's what sustainability means to the artist. And those 36 artists are from around the world. I have ticked, and not just a tick, but very consciously chosen every DEI that I can. So I've got people, all genders, all orientations, races, continents, language backgrounds, and disabled, neurodiverse. People say it's hard to find a woman. Imagine doing that. It's hard, but oh my God, is it worth it? I just,
Yeah. Yeah.
emerging artists as well. We're doing it as a co-op. The money they make from the work is shared from the profits of the book and or the speaking and or whatever the postcards in cafes. I'd love to do that. Um,
Yeah.
so it is this big thing. And that's, for me, that's what success looks like when it's no longer in my hands. I don't want to own this thing. I want the world to own it. I want cafes to create postcards that have values on them that are what matter to them. I want corporations to move from 3 values on a screensaver to I don't know, actually living them and saying to their staff, right, one of our values is care. We want you all to do something. You've got 5 days a year to do something you care about.
Mm.
That for me is success.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredibly inspiring. I think, yeah, I mean, a lot of people out there have had a really shit year of it this year, I want to say. And I think we all need to hope, right? We all need to reset, reorientate around something. And it's not going to be led by the organizations. It's not going to be a job description that
No.
motivates. It's got to be this stuff, right?
No, I agree. And I think, look, I'm trying to play in this kind of, solopreneur space, and I'm looking at running a retreat in March. And
Oh,
that
no. Yeah.
purpose of it would be, come, we'll have this conversation and we'll
Yeah.
do it around great food. And if you want to bring a yoga mat, do, but it's not one of those retreats. But there'll be a fire and there may be wine, and we're going to talk about what matters to you. And we're going to help you return to whatever it is, home, work, aligned. I don't want to become the Oprah Winfrey of values, because this is not about getting on my high horse. Values can be good and bad. Everyone has values, whether they're subjective. Yeah. It is about just knowing what yours are and living by them, because that is when you're truly being fulfilled as a human. I've learnt this the hard way. I worked my ass off. Parenting for me was really hard. I love my children a lot, and I remember one of my colleagues years ago saying, it's meant to be fun. I'm like, really? Not fun for me. It was hard.
Yeah.
And I worked and I worked. Just as I was about to turn 50 and my youngest was doing her HSC, I got breast cancer. I have had it's 5 years. It's been a really hard, physically
Yeah.
taxing 5 years. I
Yeah. Well,
worked through all of it because I had to. I didn't have the funds I couldn't pay my rent if I didn't work. It was as simple as that. Of course, when I then come out the other side, I get made redundant. I'm like, you fuckers, I gave you what I couldn't give myself, I gave you. So I get that the world is, and this is where this has all come from. I sat in it. I lost a friend to suicide. I got made redundant. I was coming out the other side of treatment, and the world was really dark. And I was like, this can't be it. Like, it just got to be kinder to one another. We've got to, you didn't need to make me redundant. They could have had a conversation with me as an executive design director that said, look, we need to move, where the market's tough, whatever. What do you think about 2 days a week? And take some time to get better. And I would have jumped at the opportunity because I didn't know that was like, just talk to me. Don't just bring me in on a call one day with 10 of my, and they were people that reported into me. I didn't even know about it, to a random call with HR with 10 of my team and say, you guys are all redundant. And then I had to nurture my team through it because they were shocked, but
Yeah.
I didn't know about it for myself. So that is not leadership with care.
No.
That's where it comes from. I'm hoping that enough of us can come up, friends of mine that are made redundant whilst on parenting leave. It's just not cool, guys. And we have to hold people accountable. And this is, I've been angry for 30 years and I have been a rebel. I really have. I used to call myself a maverick or an agent provocateur. And now I'm not resigned to it, but I have realized that saying kill them with kindness, or you get more, what is it, bees with sugar, ants with honey than you do with acid, or whatever that saying is. It
Yeah, I
actually
don't
is.
agree.
Yeah. And it's taken me 35 years. So if I can save people time and we can, you know what, being angry has not got me any results. It really hasn't. If anything, it's sidelined me as the angry woman. And so now instead of just attacking, which you get defense, I'm now laying out my complaints. Yeah, the complaints are around the system and think about it, a complaint as in, and my therapist told me this, that there are two ways. You can attack or you can complain. An attack will always be met with defensiveness, but a complaint is saying, my back is hurting. Yeah, that's your complaint is, and
Yeah.
people will
Yeah.
come in
It's
and go,
objective.
okay, let me help you with that.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you need a new chair, or can I give you a back rub if you're lucky?
Yeah.
So I'm going that way about it, fighting without fighting. I'm laying on the table, if we be inclusive rather than exclusive, this and this will happen. What do you think?
Mm.
I'm
Yeah, I
hoping
really
that
like that.
will join my movement.
Oh, I think they will, I think they will. You're onto something really big here. I can
I
feel
hope
it.
so. I
The
have I do write about it a lot for free if anyone's interested. Join in. I just think it's a lot of the time I'm attacked still. And I don't know why that is when you kind of put stuff up and, Chris, you came on through a comment on LinkedIn about, this is great and we should have more of this. But a lot of the quiet DMs that I get are about, getting in the way, or this isn't feasible, or just that kind of
yeah, yeah.
no before
Block it.
they really
Yeah, yeah.
understand.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, intrapreneurs are used to it. If you're working human-centered design thinking, you know that the constraints are kind of almost the starting point, and it's a bit
Yeah.
like when someone says no is the starting point of the negotiation, right?
He doesn't
So
love a good pain point.
you love it. And yeah, I mean, the blog subtitle that you had it says introducing the 6 themes of the affection economy, a compass for living and leading with heart. So I think in the way you've described it, and now that we know the backstory behind what's gone into that, I can really feel that people would get behind it.
Yeah.
But what I also like about it is the reframe, because most of the values and the themes that you've identified, if you take, say you're an entrepreneur at work and you spot something that really, really annoyed you that day, or like it's just like totally broken, anything in that sort of realm could be reframed as a positive, and it would be one of the things that you've just went through. So, if I feel like my boss is this and that, maybe we think about the heart and belonging, for example,
Yeah.
because it's reframed
Yeah.
as a challenge for belonging rather than a point around distance and alienation. That sort of thing. I feel it's a reframe as positive. It's a positive way to think about it rather than negative.
And just the embedding of those words. I
Yeah.
honestly, I remember 15 years ago, I was speaking at a conference in Asia. I was doing experience design in shopping malls back in my architecture days. And I
Yeah.
used the word love, and I watched the room cringe. And I was kind of like, oh, that was fun. I'm going to
Oh,
start using
okay. Just to get the
more.
reaction. Yeah.
Because in
Yeah.
Revolution, love's in there, albeit backwards. But I literally saw these men go, oh, and I thought, how sad is it that the word love makes people uncomfortable in a work environment? So being playful with it, saying to your team, I care about you. Who wouldn't want to hear that? I
Yeah.
care if is your workload too much? I worry, or I'm concerned, or what can we do together? How can we co-design, whatever it collectively do? I don't know. I just think our language, our everyday, for the intrapreneurs listening, embed this stuff into your language and people will just, it'll catch on. Because we all grew up with kindness. Well, most of us did. We all craved kindness growing up. I think we all still crave it. I really do. I just, tell me a time when you were walking down the street and someone smiled at you that you thought, bloody idiot. I mean, there are some curmudgeons out there, but they're not in my
Yeah. Yeah, you know them. You know which ones those are.
know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think, maybe the language is your next book, right? You could think about corporate
Yeah,
language and
maybe.
change it
Maybe.
places. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for the chat, Jay. I mean, you've been incredibly generous in sharing open, heartfelt stories from all angles of life and your past and your heritage. And yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot.
We went
And
everywhere, didn't we?
went everywhere. Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, I can't wait to see the book when it's out next year and to see all the art and the amazing things that you've been describing.
Yes.
But yeah, if people want to get in touch with you or if they've got a question or they want to follow any of your writing, where would they best find you?
Easy. I'm just jetswain.com. Just the
Yeah,
easiest
okay.
spots. My matrilineal Substack link is there. My blog's there. It's all there. My retreats are there. I'm trying to package it all together and see if I can drive purpose and maybe with no profit, but pay my rent. Help me pay my rent. But I just think even, instead of those daggy corporate workshops, let's do something playful around values. And
Yeah, yeah,
I think there are ways that we can bring it in that's not corporatized yet that will make people roll their eyes and go, oh, another corporate,
exactly.
day.
Yeah. Needs more
So
of that.
have fun with it.
Yeah, let's put a lighter brush over 2026. I think it just needs
Wouldn't
to
that be lovely?
be. Yeah.
Let's commit to being at least kind to one person every day. Just
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Just one.
And not you. I'm not including wives and husbands and children. They don't
Okay,
count.
so yeah, somebody else.
No, someone outside your home. Just every day, one person that you can say, I was kind to that person.
Yeah, love it. Let's make a pledge.
Make a
Good.
pledge.
Well, thank you so much, Jet. We'll leave it there for now. And yeah, thanks again for coming on with the show.
You're
Really enjoyed it
amazing. Thank
very
you,
much.
Chris.
Thank you.